this is Tejal here today. Today, as you can see by the stamps and inks and acrylic block on my desk, that I'm going to be talking about stamping. I'm going to be giving you a brief introduction on the kinds of stamps that we have, the kinds of inks that are there, a little bit detail about different kinds of inks that are there. I shall go into showing you a few techniques here and there about stamping. So let's get started. First, let me start with stamps. Now there are three different kind of stamps that you get. You will be here they are. So you get your wood mounted stamps. Now wood mounted stamps are essentially red rubber stamps. Now these give out a beautiful impression, much better than any other stamps. And the same kind of red rubber can also be found with your cling stamps. Now what is the difference between a wood mount and a cling? A wood mount stamp has a wooden block permanently fixed to your red rubber, whereas a cling stamp has just the foam but not the wood. So instead of a wood mount, you would be attaching this part to your acrylic block and then stamping. The impressions are equally good with both of them, but as you can see, you will save a lot of space with your cling mounted. But there are some purists who believe that wood mounted stamps give you the best impression ever. So it's totally up to your judgment what you like, but these are the types of your wood mounted, your cling, because they will cling to your acrylic blocks. And then the third type that you get is your clear stamps. Clear stamps are different varieties. I will not go into the acrylic, photopolymer and all those. Suffice to say, these are just clear stamps. Now they are called clear stamps for the simple reason that when you place them on your acrylic block, you can see right through them. Now here I can see through my acrylic block, through this stamp, and I can place it exactly where I want. With a cling and a clear, you cannot see through the stamp, so you have to take a guess as to where you're going to place it at. You know the different kinds of stamps that we get. Let me show you a couple more. So these are all different varieties, different brands of clear stamps, and these are a little economical because you get quite a lot of variety for the price of one set. That being said, let me jump on to the types of inks that we have. So now you have your different types of inks. You have your dye inks, which are these mementos. Now in dye inks, you also have your hero arts, your hero hues. Then in dye inks also you have your distress inks. So all these are your dye inks, but each of this has a different property. Now how do you know if it is a dye ink or any other ink? The simplest way is to open up the pad and see what kind of material the ink is on. If it's a felt one, felt is hard to touch. You can see that. So if it's a felt pad, it's usually dye ink. So this is a dye based ink. This is again a felt pad. So this is again a dye based ink. What are dye based inks? They are basically inks made with dyes, and they will be absorbed into the paper. These inks are from Hero Arts. Now these Hero Hues have a property that once you stamp them, they are a little splotchy, but once they start drying out, they even out. Distress inks are amazing to stamp with. You can color with them, you can blend your paper, create backgrounds, and so on and so forth. So All these are my favorite inks, distress ink topping the list for everything. Then my Hero Arts, and then my Memento. Memento is something I really love because of this beautiful little shape. I'll show you why I like this shape for these inks. Now moving the dye inks out of the way, let me show you some more types of inks. Now you have your Watermark ink. These are all your specialty inks. Versamark is a specialty ink pad for when you want to do your heat embossing or you want to have a watermark image. This is a very sticky ink. I shall be showing you types of embossing in a subsequent video. Now this is a StazOn, this is a solvent ink. This is a permanent ink, and this is the kind of ink you would use when you are stamping on any glossy surface, on transparencies, or on any surface that is non-porous. Porous surface will absorb this ink. So non-porous surface such as your tiles, transparencies, glossy papers, they will take this ink very well. But you have to be careful to clean this ink with your special cleaner. You cannot clean this ink off your stamps with just plain water. Alright, so we're done with these two specialty inks. Now coming to your pigment inks. Now pigment ink is shown by the fact that they have foam pads. The other dye inks had felt pads. Now you can see this is a foam over here, and this is really juicy. So this ink is very slow to dry. So if you're using this ink on any surface, you have to let it dry for at least 4 to 5 hours, or use your heat gun and heat set it. I will be stamping and showing you most of these examples. And then there is this another permanent ink similar to StazOn. This is from Ranger. This is your archival ink, but this is again a permanent ink, waterproof, acid free, and it works on most of your surfaces. And I really love because this gives a very crisp impression, especially when you're stamping sentiments. So this is just an overview of what all the type of inks that are there. Of course there are many other inks, but these are the main inks that you will be using in your stamping, especially when you're beginning. So let me stamp out a couple of images and show it to you. Now when you are using your stamp for the first time, now I have not inked this stamp at all. So when it is a brand new stamp, you need to condition it. Conditioning is basically removing any trace of oil that remains after the manufacturing process. If you stamp straight away without conditioning your stamp, chances are you will get a splotchy image. So there are 2 or 3 ways how you can condition your stamps. The first is using an eraser, a regular eraser. Just take your eraser and rub over the surface of your stamp. And that's it. So with that eraser, you're taking off the oil that is there on the stamp. Any regular scratch paper would do. Let me bring out some. So I will take my Memento. I usually tend to bring my ink pad to my stamp rather than my stamp to my ink pad. It's a habit that is with me for quite a while. So now that you have stamped it, you need to clean this. Now I use 2 things. I either use a baby wipe to clean my ink, or I use the Cleanse It. Now this is a new formulation from Ranger that works on every type of ink. This will work on your dye inks, this will work on your pigment inks, and this will also work on your solvent ink pads. So you do not need to buy a separate cleaner for your clear stamps and one separate cleaner for your StazOn. This used to be the only cleaner that was for solvent, but over a period of time this is supposed to damage your clear stamps. So I have stopped using this for now. I only use it on my rubber stamps, but this works on everything. This does not damage your stamps at all. So this has a rubber top, so all you need to do is just press down slightly, rub it over your stamp, and use either a tissue or piece of cloth and clean off your stamp. Cleaning off your stamp after every use is essential. Let me show you about the Hero Hues, and let's jump onto another ink. Now if you see your stamps get stained after use, it does not matter. Now this is what will happen when you use permanent inks on your stamps. StazOn, archival inks, they all will stain your stamps. Even Hero Arts inks, Hero Hues will stain your stamps, but as long as you've cleaned them, they should be good to go. So let me show you with this. And there you go. So that is one brilliant impression. I would recommend using the cleaner because this thing conditions your stamp as well as cleaning them. So it's a two-in-one thing. And then we have your distress inks. Now distress inks are very notorious for not adhering well on clear stamps. Because they are water-based inks, they tend to repel on your clear stamps, but shouldn't be a problem. There you have a clear impression. And last but not the least, let me show you something with the archival inks. That's a beautiful gray. I have stamped these, and even if I rub my finger, these all have dried because these are dye. All of these are dye inks. This is a permanent ink. All of these have soaked into the paper. But now when I try to use my color box, now remember color box is a pigment ink. It will not get absorbed into the paper. When I use my color box, it will remain wet for a very long time. Because this is still very juicy. But if you can watch this, if I do this, this is wet. So this will stay wet for at least 3-4 hours. So whenever you stamp in pigment ink, either dry it with your heat gun or leave it aside to dry in air for 3-4 hours. So let's just clean off the stamps and start with stamping techniques.